All right, friends and enemies and detractors, we've got to have a conversation about Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson is polling really, really well among millennials. He's kind of doing pretty well among Bernie Sanders supporters as well. And Gary Johnson is nearly tied with Hillary Clinton among voters 18 to 34 years old. Hillary Clinton's polling 31. Johnson 29 and Trump 26, according to a recent Quinnipiac poll. Some of Gary Johnson's ideas at face value seem somewhat progressive, or maybe at least appealing to progressives. He's mostly in favor of abortion rights. He's mostly in favor of LGBT rights. He wants to reduce the US military footprint around the world. He's pro-marijuana. He wants to scale back the war on drugs. He doesn't have a clearly clinically insane running mate, which is a really nice thing. I get it, right? I mean, libertarians have overlap with progressives, even if for different ideological reasons sometimes. The issues on which I agree with libertarians, I agree with them really, really strongly, right? 100% in many ways. But aside from these issues, number one, Gary Johnson really lacks knowledge on many issues, but also his views on important issues are completely opposed to the positions of actual progressives. Not a single progressive should be voting for Gary Johnson. I'll just tell you some of these issues. Gary Johnson's tax reform plan would replace the income tax and the payroll tax with a consumption tax. A lot of times, right-wingers will call this simplifying the tax code. What it means is making it better for rich people and worse for poor and middle-income people. Back in 2012, when he ran for president, he proposed a 43% across-the-board single-year federal spending cut. Progressives are against haphazard cutting of federal spending. When you're talking about 43%, I know all about government waste. I know all about reducing defense spending and so many other areas of spending that we need to look at. But 1 year, cutting 43% to federal spending, any reasonable person knows that you are going to be doing some damage when you do that. Gary Johnson says he would bring the budget into balance completely through spending cuts because he has barred any tax increases. Any thinking progressive knows that that is a recipe for disaster and an impractical recipe nonetheless. On the subject of student loans, Gary Johnson is totally confused. He believes the reason that college costs are so high is because of, quote, guaranteed government student loans. Misusing the term guaranteed, seems not to even know what that means in the context of lending. There's some evidence that federal student lending might have slightly increased tuition, but it is very low on the list for the increases that we've seen in the cost of college tuition. He's publicly stated that he doesn't think the government should get involved in climate change. What progressive could possibly vote for someone who believes that? Gary Johnson supports the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He supports Citizens United because, you know, it's freedom to donate to politicians. Gary Johnson is against all forms of gun control. What progressive is against all forms of gun safety regulations? It makes no sense. Obamacare and healthcare. Gary Johnson believes, and this is just disturbing. Gary Johnson believes that the free market should be involved in health insurance, period. That is maybe the most depraved possible position on the issue of healthcare. This is a disaster. Protest vote, ideological vote for Gary Johnson. Forget about it. Now, what's happening? Why is he doing well with progressives? Number one, there are some millennial progressives that are focused on only the issues on which libertarianism is appealing, right? The issues I mentioned earlier, abortion, LGBT rights, etc. Number two, you could argue maybe it's possible that millennials don't care about the disagreements between progressive ideas and Gary Johnson's ideas because they want to sort of send a middle finger F you to the major political parties. And number three, there's also the possibility that because millennials are increasingly registered as independents, they may be sort of falling prey to this idea that, oh, I'm an independent, so therefore I shouldn't vote for a Democrat or a Republican. I'll just pick one of these third-party candidates to vote for. No matter what the reasons are, It is ridiculous for progressives to vote for Gary Johnson, and I've met a couple of them personally, and I've had a pretty good success rate in talking sense into them. Most of them had no idea about Gary Johnson's positions on TPP, student lending, healthcare, etc. But I can't talk to everybody, so hopefully progressives that are listening can take action on this and help out.